I think she throws her eyes across the jury 2 or 3 times, looking for somebody who's seeing what she's seeing. The reason I highlighted this clip, the jury was stone-faced. There was nothing. The jury gave nothing.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts and a very special video. In this video, I am having a conversation with someone who was actually in the courtroom during Amber Heard's cross-examination. He has a ton of insight about what the jurors were doing, about the vibe between Camille and Amber, things that we wouldn't have seen on camera, and a lot of great insight as to some things that we just can't have access to. So we did a stream together where I got to ask him a ton of questions about the jury. He talked about each individual jury member and what they were experiencing and how they were reacting to very telling moments. And this conversation was so enlightening. And I'm analyzing the body language that we're seeing in these clips, and he's telling us what was actually happening in the courtroom. So this is really exciting and a teaser to my full analysis, which is coming in the next couple of days. And there's some great stuff in there too. So enjoy this video, stick around, and check out the full analysis in the next couple of days. A lot of fun stuff. Here we go. So everyone, welcome to the channel. Rob from Law and Lumber. Dude, I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm really happy to get this thing going. So,
yes, sir.
Hey,
so Rob, really quick for the viewers, you are a lawyer extraordinaire. You are passionate about woodworking, and you have a gorgeous, lush beard. So I'm not saying you're Jesus, but I've never seen the two of you in the same room at the same time. So
we're just going to let people speculate on that one. I'm not going to make that claim out loud on.
What a lawyer answer. You're like, objection for speculation. I think that's the sentence we've learned. We've all learned that sentence this week. So Rob, you were kind enough, crazy enough to stay up for hours in order to get a place in that courtroom.
Yeah, that was really important to me. Having watched this trial from the beginning, I needed to be able to see what the jury was doing and to actually see the witnesses testify in person.
And how was the mood in there? Before we look at any of this footage, because in a moment we're going to jump right into some footage, some key moments where you saw some interesting activity from the jurors, some interesting things in the room that we may not have seen on camera. But what was the atmosphere? What was the mood in the room?
Spidey, that's a really good point that I kind of want to take a second on because everyone in that jury or everyone in the gallery has mostly been a very pro-Depp vibe. From the line, people are talking about Johnny Depp, people are dissing Amber Heard. So when you get into that courtroom, there's this feeling that a lot of the people in there are not really on Amber Heard's side. And that actually can kind of lead into a little bit of our discussion about Amber Heard's body language and how she's perceiving the room, which might explain some of the things that she does.
Wow. You know, until this moment, I never thought of that. I've been watching this trial from day one. It never even dawned on me that when she's speaking out this way, looking at the lawyer who's questioning her, whether it's direct or cross, she's seeing the people behind them. And there are certain things that we project. We know this in interrogation. When we learn interrogation or interviewing, we're told you can't go in there bringing the luggage of your day with you because whatever you're feeling, you might project onto the person you're interrogating. So that's right off the bat. What an incredible little piece of information. So we have some footage here we're going to look at together, starting with actually, I want to see this. This is like evidence. I want you all to pay attention to this handsome gentleman in the audience, right as the audience stands here. Check this out. Bam. Look at that chill guy leaning on the wall there. You recognize that guy?
I don't know. I like this. This is a lot more comfortable.
Okay. You do look very professional. You're playing the role of gallery member number 26 really effectively.
Yeah. Well, it's not just a role. Like, this is a courtroom I actually practice in. So I know this courtroom and I know this courthouse, and I'm going to be darned if I don't show up actually looking like a lawyer in a courtroom where I practice.
Will you please tell the jury what happened that night with respect to, in particular, Mr. Depp?
At that time we had a fitting that day or the day before, and he missed it, and he was kind of disappearing at that time, like at night, vaguely saying like meetings, he had meetings, but then he'd be gone for sometimes like 2 days. I'm just not coming home and that sort of thing. Coming home after a bender makes
Calls for speculation
worse.
as to Bender.
I don't think that calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection. She's gone for 2 days. Go ahead.
And I had my birthday was coming up, and or on my birthday I said, well, are you gonna make it to my birthday party? We had a dinner planned at our penthouse. I said it would be important for me if you made it.
Objection, hearsay.
Not offered to prove the truth of the matter
Overruled.
asserted. Thank you.
And he told me at some point that day that he had scheduled a business meeting or a money meeting, I think he said, maybe, 7, which is around the time my birthday was planned for. It might have been planned for 8 p.m. He... of course, once my party was starting, he wasn't there. Texted me at some point to let me know that he was going to make it, but that he was running late.
So Rob, that's a scene where we both, as we talked about, which moments were important, you and I both had that on our list. And I think that that's really telling, both from a behavior standpoint and from what you saw live in the room. There's a lot going on. So she's asked a question, and already the way she begins to answer that question, like usually she's just ready to attack. In this one, we see a ton of hesitancy. We see her clearing her throat. She looks up as she's getting ready. We see a lip lick, and we see some verbal leaks right in the beginning, before she even starts to talk. So this isn't very consistent with the way she normally just instantly responds. So something's going on here. Maybe she has a prepared script for this specific question. Maybe she discussed this question with her lawyers. So we're seeing that, then the answer begins. So I'll let you take it from there, Rob. Once she begins to answer, what are we seeing? What were you feeling in the room? What's going on here?
So I want to pick up kind of where you were leading in there. And before we get to her actual answer, you can see her testing something. The day prior, the day before we went to that week-long break, her posture and demeanor on the stand was very aggressive. She was very upright, very back in the stance, and very backwards in the chair. Here you can see her leaning forward, but she's not fully leaning forward. Her shoulders are shrugging. She is doing a turtle move, basically, that essentially evokes emotion, and is supposed to indicate that she has gone through trauma, and that's what people who have gone through trauma oftentimes do.
For those of you who are new to the channel, sorry to cut you off, Rob. Turtling is what we call when we come inwards like this, much like a turtle retreating into the shell, because we protect all the vital organs. On the front, on the side, we close in like this. But there's something, and Rob, I have a feeling this is where you're going with this, that we do that we're not seeing here.
Yeah, so one of the things that you're not seeing is the microphone is up, and she doesn't adjust it downward. But I don't know if that's intentional or not, but what you see is she does a lot of neck extension. So there's the turtle of the shoulders, but the body doesn't follow. Most witnesses who have gone through a traumatic experience like this, or are testifying about trauma, when the turtle is there, the turtle is real. They have this instinct to basically drop their chin, and they almost go to a murmur or a mumble. It's never this projected voice or projected look.
Clarity.
And then the other thing about this one is that she's looking at the jury with this. When people are turtling and they're going through an emotional experience and they're actually emoting that correctly, they don't speak to anybody in particular. They're actually going inward. They're talking to themselves. They're answering the question.
Yeah, inner monologue tends to be downward. So we retreat, we turtle, it's a shameful experience, so we tend to just sort of jumble it up a little, which is another thing Emily Baker said, which is she's very clearly enunciating these things. That isn't consistent with that body language of turtling, which is a beautiful point.
Let's take one step back and talk about what the courtroom layout is like. Now, this courtroom is one of the larger courtrooms that you're going to be in. There's 100 people that are allowed into that courtroom every single day. Most of the people that are showing up for this trial in the lines and in the gallery are notably Johnny Depp fans. He's had the more motivated crowd. And there's a notable sense of apprehension on the Amber Heard team. Doesn't take a genius to realize that she's kind of facing an adverse crowd. So without a lot of allies, that can kind of explain why she's darting her eyes around a bunch. because she's trying to find friendly faces. You don't want to lock in on someone who is notably aggressive towards you. She has her lawyers on the left-hand side. She'll look extreme left to them. Then there's the podium, which we'll see when she's answering questions from Ms. Vasquez or Ms. Bredehoff. And then there's the jury, and that's when she cocks her head this way. The jury box is lined up, going basically from this way back. And Spidey's going to pull up a diagram of the jury that reflects what I saw and kind of gives us some demographic information about who's sitting in that box. Now, that box itself is 6 rows across, or 6 seats across and 2 rows deep. The empty boxes are actually empty seats. We have 9 potential jurors, and in this particular trial, the jurors that are going to go into deliberation is going to be 7, and it's 7 that are randomly selected. So these were my observations of the juror. Now, juror I, or 9, in the bottom right-hand corner, this juror is the closest to Amber Heard. He is physically the closest to her, and also almost an extreme downward angle. So I want you to watch her eyes when she's testifying and tell me where she's looking. Oftentimes you will see her, she's going to look at jurors D4 or E5, and that's going to be her first glance. And then if they don't meet her eyes, you're going to see her dart her eyes down to H8, G7, F6. That's where she feels like she has the second set of allies in this courtroom.
So,
And
so
last,
you think she's connecting most with D and E?
she thinks she is. That's what she perceives as her allies. I'm not going to say whether they are or are not. That's honestly complete speculation on my part.
Sure,
What
sure,
that
that's
is,
you think that's what she thinks.
yeah, that's what you observe with a lot of her testimony, where she looks for a lot of these questions. And when she gives that direct answer, you're going to see those eyes go straight to D and E immediately. And that's when if they're not meeting her eyes, then she'll go elsewhere.
It's so funny how the pocket you described as her preference is the one that's 100% female, and then her second option is the one that's 33% female. Because if we look at the chart, top right, D and E is where you said she first goes, is where it's the 2 females, and then she looks down to those 3 where the only other female is. So according to what you're observing, she's trying to connect with the females and get that sisterhood thing going on, maybe, is what she's going for.
I'm just following a pattern. Now, it's a natural inclination for a witness to look to the person nearest to them. Now, in this particular case, that would be juror number I, or 9, but that juror has been noticeably aggressive in opposition to Amber Heard. So it's no question why I should look straight over his head to jurors 4 and 5 to kind of bypass that opposition.
Why do you say juror I or 9 was not vibing with her?
So observations of him, and you might want to throw the camera on for this one. Observations of him, his visual. So if I am that juror, Amber Heard is to my left. So when when Amber's testifying, he will have his hands up to his face, doing a little bit of mouth blocking. Doesn't really want to see, and a lot of his body posture, his shoulders are aimed at the podium rather than at the witness.
Wow.
Most people, when a witness is on direct examination, you want to see their shoulders aimed at the witness who's giving that testimony. It's their direct testimony. It's their narrative. Elaine Bredehoff is a prop at this point. She is supposed to give the witness the stage, and all of the jurors are supposed to be angled to the stage. Well, juror I/9 has his shoulders aimed at the podium almost 100% of the time, and he has the mouth block, oftentimes with this particular hand, which blocks Amber Heard.
Yeah, sure.
And once Elaine Bredehoff says something, he will, instead of turning his body or even moving his head, he will do this and
Wow.
look side eye. And anyone who's ever been in front of a courtroom, when a judge or a jury does that, that's an indication that they're more focused on what the attorney is saying, and they're less focused on what you're saying because they don't trust what you're saying, period. 1, 2, 3 are the hardest to guess. 1 is he's our note taker. He is attentive to most of the testimony. Doesn't do a lot of shoulder movement, but 1, 2, and 3, they are, I would say they're attentive. 2 is also kind of an interesting character. I don't mean to say character. What I mean to say is he's an interesting observation. He tends to almost outwardly ignore testimony he doesn't believe relevant. He gives our most visual expressions of anyone on the jury. He is our most physically expressive juror. He physically leans forward when he's forward and head down into the lap when he's not really focused. Um, or he will be up, or he will actually, at certain points in time, reach for his ears or fiddle with his pen. He'll pass it back and forth with his hands. I mean, things that you don't like to see if you're an attorney. When you're an attorney, you want to see that focus on the witness, you, period.
That was so great, and it's going to be so helpful moving forward. Thank you so much. So now we know what the courtroom is like. We know what the jurors are like. We're now going to look at the following clip. And Rob, you're going to tell us what you saw in the jury, and we're both going to talk about the body language. But before we do me a huge favor, everyone, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more amazing behavior analysis content.
I'm pointing out I didn't cooperate with the police, that I didn't want to get him in trouble, that I didn't want to hurt him. I don't want any.
Okay, so the first observation here, I want the people to focus on the eye movement. So exactly what I saw right off the bat. The eye is coming across level to the right. That is looking at 4 and 5. That's not looking down at 9. That's looking at 4 and 5. You'll see she passes a really quick glance at 9, but then she's right back up to 4 and 5. And then you see that she moves towards the center of the box. Like I was saying before, she goes down to 7 and 8. The notes that I wrote down was D and E were calling BS just because their eyes were moving backwards, moving left and right a little bit. They weren't making direct eye contact with her. And I also noticed that number 1 at this point in time had no eye contact, was looking directly forward. B at this point had his head straight down, and C had his arms crossed. He had his arm crossed and down around his lap.
Sorry, before you go on, is arm crossing common for this person? Because arm crossing is one of those things that can mean so many things all over the spectrum. And some people, where they're sitting, they just get comfortable that way. So did his arms cross in this moment, or did you notice that they were crossed throughout quite frequently?
They were crossed throughout quite frequently, and that was important to me because it showed that he wasn't alert to this. He was in his normal posture. His normal posture being that relaxed.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
that's a really
exactly.
good point, because it could mean a lot of things, none of which is alert.
Yep. And that was what I observed at the beginning of this. Now, when we go back to Amber, she's getting herself ready to get into an emotional state. And here we're about to see herself throw herself into that emotional state. I don't know,
Yeah.
Spidey, am I off?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think, listen, by my reflex, and I wasn't in the room, so I'm just going based on what you're saying. My reflex is when you're saying that 4 and 5 were averting eye contact, that's got to be one of two things. It's either like discomfort because the story that she's saying is making them uncomfortable, or it's that they're really not buying what she's putting forward here, and they don't even want to dignify it. So it's from what you're describing, especially because she noticed it and then switched over, as you're saying, to someone else. It just wasn't connecting. It wasn't hitting. This pause is actually excellent because this is supposed to be a sad moment, but look at her forehead. We're seeing that V. Typically when we're sad, we see lines across, and there's a little bit of a dip here. With her, when she's in those moments where she's sad or emotional, we see 2 straight lines across here. But in this case, we're seeing this downwards thing, and that's anger. And the tension is anger.
When I came back and rewatched this tape with my notes next to me, what this ticking off point, and the reason why I wanted to stop here, was this was that original sales pitch, the whole I'm going to sway back and forth, it wasn't selling. And she's expressing frustration that the jury is not buying it. And so she's going to heighten the emotion, and she's going to go for broke. She is going to go into a very, very dramatic, and here she is setting herself up for it. And when she throws her head down, and you'll see it, when she throws her head down, that's her going for the sales pitch. The true witnesses that are trying to sell emotion don't have to. It comes from the body. They emote. The jury finds and feels them, and they find that connection. The witnesses that are searching for a connection, and when they don't find it, it is the most frustrating thing that they can experience in that moment, because this is their opportunity to tell their truth. And if the person's not believing it, they have 2 options. 1, cave. 2, go for broke. The cavers crumble and start stuttering and stammering. The go for brokers explode.
Commit, amplify, I bet.
Absolutely.
Anything from him, just don't call me a liar. It's all I said, just don't call me a liar.
Liar.
So the trailing words is one part of it. That was the first time you got the trailing off, where the sentence dies in her mouth. It's an over dramatization. She's kind of withholding a little bit, but it's also selling. Now, the other thing about this one is with this particular instance, carrying on from what we discussed with the last little segment, you see the anger. What you're seeing here isn't as sadness. It's not. It's frustration. You see clenched jaw. You see cheeks raised. You don't see slack face. You see aggression. I want to make a caveat here. As attorneys, when I'm seeing this kind of thing, I'm not trying to say whether the person is or is not being truthful. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for the next question. I'm looking for where am I going in this examination to find more truth, to dig deeper and to find
How
out
do I
what
poke?
is real and what's not real. And I want the jury to make that decision because that's not my job.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Just don't say this isn't real. Because I'm the walking proof of it.
I wanted to stop there too, but I just wanted to follow your lead. I just want to throw something in here. This word proof, she used it a lot that day. You know, like she said, I have proof and this and evidence that, and I didn't want to prove this. I think she has a very big misconception or delusion as to how effective she is, because I don't think most people would look at her testimony and consider it proof of anything.
I mean, yeah, and if you look at her eyes when she's saying the word proof and when she's going in that, look how much they're searching. They're not just going at the jury. That's when she does her first jury box scan, where she hits every single set of eyes in that jury box, but then she looks across the gallery, but the eyes flick so fast across the back gallery, and where her eyes end up when she's looking to that far left, that's her counsel table. That's not the
Right.
podium. And then she kind of centers back on the podium because that's where she realizes she needs to be answering. The thing about this one is the jury responses at this point in time. At this point in time, Spidey, pull the jury box up. Let's see this. So at this point in time, F is he's pretty stiff and he's just looking at her, but he's not. His shoulders are not aimed at her. Actually, throughout this entire segment, one thing that I found curious was all of the jurors' shoulders were aimed at the podium rather than the witness, and their heads were turned to the witness. So
Throughout, you mean throughout this response?
throughout all of this response, which is an indication to me, at least personally, that the attorney's not doing their job appropriately or the witness isn't doing their job appropriately. Either the attorney has stolen the thunder, in which case the attorney has failed, or the witness is not actually telling a compelling story, in which the witness has failed. Because where the shoulders are, that's where the attention is.
Sure.
So going back to that jury box, A at this point kind of leans back, and there's a little bit of, I don't want to say a head shake because I don't want people to speculate it, but it was this tiny little micro like jiggle of the neck slash chin. And then at this point, G right there is he's going through this pattern of going head up to meet, eyes up to meet her, eyes back down, eyes up to meet her, eyes back down, and he stops taking notes. And I found that to be very curious because it indicates that he's somewhat engaged, but not fully engaged. And he's using, in my opinion, the notepad as a mechanism for him to disconnect from whatever's happening on the witness stand.
Wow.
He's looking up and he's looking back down. He's looking up, he's looking back down. And at some point he just commits to looking down and he starts taking notes, but it's not like he was taking notes from the beginning. It's like the taking the notes made him, I don't know, almost withdraw into a comfort area because that's the place he knows he can hide. He can put his head down. He doesn't have to make eye contact with anyone in the room, and he can just make notes or scribble on his notepad. He doesn't have to watch. He can just listen.
Sort of in the same way that Johnny Depp has been scribbling things this whole time as well.
Correct.
Like his comfort.
Ask to bring up plaintiff's exhibit, Depp exhibit 357F as in Frank, 24:04 to 24:48, and move the admission.
All right, any objection?
No objection.
All right, 357F.
So for this entire emotional breakdown or this demonstration, this entire emotional bit of testimony, I was not even looking at my notepad. I was just writing, scribbling as fast as I could in shorthand what I could because I wanted to keep my eyes on the jurors because I wanted to see their real-time analysis to kind of see from start to finish of the emotional breakdown how they responded. And by the very end of it, basically every single one of them was either looking down and taking notes with zero eye contact. E, the top right juror, she was swiveling her chair and looking straight ahead. It was a very awkward movement to basically see someone who's in a chair like this, just doing this and looking straight ahead and not at the witness. It was like waiting for the next thing to come. And
Like
then,
boredom. Is that, would you
yeah,
equate that to boredom? Yeah. Because
that
anything like that,
or
like,
just yeah, yeah,
yeah, just like sort of like just killing time. Like, okay, let's get on with this.
yeah,
And I feel like here's the thing. Like, let's not. I don't want this to sound like we're like these jury whisperers. It's been a while. It's been weeks that they're listening to these stories. It's been a while that they're listening to Amber. They had a week off. Now they come back. They're still listening to Amber. So it's very possible that they are getting pretty short with their patience when it comes to things that they've heard multiple times, and when they're seeing more of the same. These breakdowns, she was having them numerous times. So it's very possible that it's not disbelief or skepticism. It's possible that it's simply like, we get it. We've heard this before. We've made our minds up about this. Let's keep going.
Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence. And yes. It's a fair fight. And Steve, how many people believe or side with you?
That's your voice on that recording, right?
Yes, it is.
And you were speaking with Mr. Depp?
Yes.
And you said to Mr. Depp, quote, you can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and the judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp, a man, a victim too of domestic violence, end quote. That's what you said, right?
I was saying it to the man who beat me up, yes. I thought it was preposterous.
And the man you beat up numerous times. Right, Ms. Heard?
I could never hurt Johnny.
You're here in this courtroom because Mr. Depp finally told the world that he's a victim of domestic violence.
I know that he is suing me and has sued other people or corporations that have said that as well.
I want to focus on her answers really quick, and then I'm going to pass it over to you because I think you saw some interesting things here. So I want to start with her asking, so Camille, and we're going to talk about Camille, but Camille Vasquez says, the man you beat up. And the answer Amber says is, I could never hurt Johnny. That's a non-answer statement. That doesn't answer the question, because technically in her head, she can be saying, yeah, I beat him up, I hit him, but it didn't hurt him. I can't hurt him. I don't have the strength to hurt him despite trying. So that doesn't answer the question. It's pretty dodgy. And then Camille asks, we're here because, he called you out on this. And then we get another non-answer statement where she goes, he sued, I know that he's suing me and he sued other people as well. Why are you bringing other people into this? So to me, those two answers seem very dodgy, but talk to us, Rob.
Now, the interesting thing about this one is no matter what you are, no matter who you are, no matter how many years you practiced law, you set someone up for an examination or a cross-examination like this, it is the most nerve-wracking thing in the whole wide world. You are scared out of your mind. And not just like scared, there's this mix of anticipation, anxiety, eagerness. You've been waiting for this moment. And Amber Heard has
Especially,
just...
I would bet, on this scale. Like, they all know what this is. And they all know that the world's waiting. Even if technically they're not supposed to check the news and be up to date, they know that this cross-examination is going to make history.
And Camille Vasquez, who's prepped this cross for the last several months, has also been watching Amber Heard do all of the things that we just discussed in the video. You think she hasn't picked up on a lot of these different things. So there's frustration, there's a lot of anxiety, there's anticipation, and you can hear it in her voice when she starts talking. There's a little bit of a quake, and there's a smirk, and there's a kind of an eagerness. She leans forward on the podium, and she kind of gets herself amped up, and she... At one of those responses that Amber Heard gives, I don't know if it was the minimizing or I could never hurt Johnny or he beat me up. I went after the person who beat me up. There's a smirk, and then immediately you see this, what's the best word for it? Almost a contempt for the response that she just received. It flashes across her face in an instant. And then
we're
the
going to
tone
see
of
that
her
a
voice.
lot, by the way. We're going to see that a lot with Camille, by the way. She's going to have these sort of jabs of like, really, like almost like to where she almost even says it sometimes, like, are we really supposed to believe that? There's mockery, there's laughter at times. I'm going to cover a lot of this in my full analysis that's coming up in the next couple of days, but there's a lot of stuff from her, like where she really calls out Amber at times. And here we're seeing that emotion bubble up without her expressing it.
Yep. And what you watch in this clip is you start to see these two scale. They start scaling up. They start escalating and they escalate each other. And then you can see the contempt and derision come out at each other. Now, Camille, what she does to kind of calm herself and to slow herself down is she does this gesture and she settles herself. Attorneys, when they have their arms on the podium, when we're anxious like that, you can't stop the tremors and the shaking.
Yep.
There's little movements, and you see with Camille, she's
Quick.
pointing at her. Yeah, she's pointing at her notepad, and you can kind of tell that that's not comfortable for her. So then she does this gesture, and she leans on the podium, and that's her rock. And I didn't even think of that, but when I said that's her rock, that is exactly the feeling that you were going for as an attorney. You were trying to settle yourself, find a point where you can then exude from, like you then project from that point, and you're stable.
Now, there's something I want to ask you about Camille Vasquez, and I want your opinion on this. It's kind of the perfect plan for her to be the one to do this cross-examination, because you look at her, she's young, she's attractive, and throughout this trial, there's been kind of a little bit of a chemistry between her and Johnny that a lot of people have been commenting on. She'll go give him a bottle of water, she'll smile at him, he'll smile back. There's this bit of thing. And if you think about Amber Heard, and she's been diagnosed with BPD, people who have borderline personality disorder typically obsess with who their ex is seeing and who their ex is talking to and who's this girl and who's that girl. And I used to work as a therapist, and very often when I had people who had BPD, they would say like, oh, I went on his Instagram, he's got this new girl, who is she, and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like, I don't know if I'm paranoid. I might be just this crazy paranoid psychology dude, but it's kind of the perfect plan for this younger attorney who's got these vibes with Johnny to come question her and trigger Amber Heard. Do you think that that's by design, or is that just a really big coincidence?
My take is that what you said is true as far as how Amber reacts to the person that's asking her questions. No doubt there. But what I take about Camille is that clients choose attorneys that match them. Clients are drawn to attorneys. I'm getting here, Spidey. I see you're excited. I do, because you're making the connection that I've made, and you're shocked about it, and you had no clue I was going to go there. Clients choose attorneys that match their personality, and a lot of that goes because the dynamic between attorney and client, you kind of have to be on the same page. Where as an attorney, even though you don't experience that emotion the client had, you have to be able to convey that. And Camille is Johnny's shield and she is Johnny's sword. When a client's sitting at that table, they don't have a voice. They have to take in everything that's being said, and they have to take it. And it is got to be one of the hardest things in the whole wide world. Well, the attorney is there too, and the attorney has spent months and months and months developing a relationship, a connection with the client. When we jump up at that podium, we know that you've placed a remarkable amount of trust in us, and we actually feel that and embrace that. And we know that that's our chance to speak on your behalf. So every bit of indignation that you faced throughout that trial, every bit of frustration, sadness, and beaten down, all of that, we have the opportunity to come back and project that back. We can then fight. And that's what you see in Camille. And that's what you see in that dynamic. Camille was the perfect choice, not because it would piss Amber off, because Camille was an extension of Johnny. And that, in turn, pisses Amber off. When Camille Vasquez is up there and getting assertive and aggressive, this is Johnny Depp's voice. This is Johnny Depp finally getting to fight back. And he's not doing it through testimony. He's doing it through questions. He's doing it through truth. Yep.
I can corroborate that, because Camille has been really focused on keeping Amber in the literal.
Yep.
So anytime she deviates into what, gaslighters or manipulators might do to, because if it's a one-on-one argument, just Johnny and Amber, and there isn't a public, there isn't a judge to make sure everything is being done right, she could say things like, no, you didn't say that. I know what you said. Don't tell me what you said. You're driving me crazy. You're hurting me, and all this stuff. And she could go into this super emotional thing. Whereas Camille, anytime there's an attempt of that, she goes, no, that's not what I asked you. I asked you this, yes or no. So in a sense, I agree with what you're saying 100%. And I would even go as far as saying, because she doesn't have a relationship with Amber, she can say the hurtful things that Johnny can't, in terms of like, no, I don't care about that. Answer my question.
I'm going to hit you with a hot take. At the end of Camille Vasquez's cross-examination on day one, just to give you an indication of how important this was to her and how much that emotional connection between her and Johnny actually is real. Um, Cameras shut down and everything clears. The jury's out, and Camille Vasquez stands up. Bench, who rushes over and gives her a massive hug. Not a small hug, man. This was a bear hug. Johnny Depp gives her a hug. She turns around to the gallery, and the gallery is approaching to congratulate her on finally starting to cross-examine this witness. And you see this well. Like, you see people tense up, and the emotion, it's like it rises from the belly and it comes up, and then all of a sudden she starts to break down and cry. All of the emotion that she had from that day and from the stress of doing this cross-examination finally came out of her. She finally got to take that shot on behalf of her client. And it meant that much to her that at the end of the day, she was brought to tears. This is a practitioner. This is an attorney who's been practicing. She got a bar license in 2010. She's a 12-year practitioner. Like, that's as long as I've been practicing. And
Yeah,
when you finish an examination and that emotion comes out of you, that's real. That's raw.
that's real.
And that was
Yeah.
fantastic to see.
That's incredible. And you know, it's funny because again, I'm going to talk about this in my analysis. There's such a contrast in the way that she talks to Amber and the way she talks to the judge. When she talks to the judge, it's this sweet little, oh, do you want this? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Would it be a good time to? And even the way when she talked to the deputy sheriff, like, I'm sorry, she said first said deputy, last name. She goes, I'm sorry, deputy sheriff. Like, respectful, kind, even like minimal in the space she takes. But when it was time to grill Amber, this beast came out, and there was
Yep.
times where we were seeing like it was personal to her.
Yep.
It was a beautiful thing to see that, and what a testament, like what you said, what a testament that she's willing to get that worked up. This isn't just for a client. She feels something in Johnny that she needs to protect.
Yep. And she feels something in Amber she needs to expose.
Wow, dude, that just gave me chills. It's incredible. And the fact that you were there around that, to me, is worth more than anyone else's testimonial, because you're in that room and that's something you can feel that we can't through a video.
Yep.
And you testified that this was taken in Tokyo in July of 2013, correct?
Yes,
So you decided to take a picture of Mr. Depp asleep on the floor?
he was passed out.
That's a
And I
yes.
took a picture of him because he wouldn't remember. He claimed he didn't pass out that way. And sometimes security would carry him like a baby into bed and get him changed. And he would be none the wiser. So I started taking pictures of it so that he knew that it was real, that it had gotten this bad.
Talk to me, baby.
So several things. One, Vasquez, the same thing I said in that previous clip. She asserts herself back up and says, so that's a yes. It's that direct. It's that, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to gaslight, just like you tried to do Johnny the whole time. I'm not going to let you do that. Give me a yes. And then Amber does this really broad searching glance across the jury. I think she throws her eyes across the jury 2 or 3 times, looking for somebody who's seeing what she's seeing. The reason I highlighted this clip, the jury was stone-faced. There was nothing. The jury gave nothing. And for me, that one was, Vasquez's point was 100% made, because the jury just gave nothing.
They gave nothing. So, very important, and you may not remember, they gave nothing as soon as Amber gave that response of the reason she took the photo.
It was when she was looking around. She took the photo, and then she does this backwards and forwards glance across the box. And as she's looking at the box, and that's why the glance is so sweeping. It's not one of
She's
these
just looking for an
direct.
ally.
She's scanning. It's not point. This is one of the only times when you actually see her do that woo, 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 the back and forth. And she finds nothing, because the jury is just sitting there stone-faced. They just stared. It was crazy, because what Amber was trying to do here was trying to say, look, see this from my perspective. I want you to see this from my perspective. And Vasquez came in hot with the whole answer my question. And then to get no response from the jury and to leave Amber Heard hanging when she's searching for eyes, that's abandonment.
My God. And you know what? This answers the question that so many people have, which is, why does Amber keep looking like this? I mean, I've been saying it from day one. This is what we call a confirmation glance. When you throw a story out and you want it to stick, you scan your audience to see how it's sticking, how they're buying it. This is her audience. These are the people who are going to determine her fate. Johnny would address them every now and then, but most of the time he was just telling his story. He was here, he was revisiting it, he was reliving it. And again, please, understand, I am not attacking Amber. I'm not defending Johnny. I'm just commenting on behavior. So Johnny's in that sort of introverted place where he's just telling his story. He's telling his truth. He doesn't really care so much about how it comes off. But yeah, she's just scanning that audience continuously. And it's almost like those confirmation glances at some point turn into like a, am I right type thing? Like, am I right? Come on, am I right?
Yeah, and here's an observation that I don't know if you picked up on it, and a big dichotomy between Johnny and Amber and how they testified. When Johnny was testifying for the jury, when he was turtled over, when he was doing this, when he would address the jury, he didn't come straight back up. He did this first. He did this. It wasn't a I'm coming out of character. He did this, and then he would address them kind of sideways. He kept it. It was still
Wow.
natural. He realizes he has to let them in, and he does this, and he welcomes them into the story. And then as he starts telling the story this way, you start to see his body turn. He's actually feeling them come into the story. Amber straight up look down. She stands up and her neck protrudes and she turns and faces. It
Well,
is
she's
so much.
presenting.
Yep, it is exactly. So I start in every single case looking at everything as if, look, when a judge puts on a robe, the reason they put the robe on is the robe actually is cloaking their persona. They are no longer their person. They are themselves justice. When they're standing on top of the bench, the reason the bench is elevated, the robe actually is a mask that the judge puts over their body to actually personify justice. In that moment, the second the robe is on, they're not supposed to take one position one way or the other. Now, we're all human, so we all experience emotions in different ways, and so do attorneys. But with this one, it drives me nuts when I watch testimony that's difficult to square with the facts in either direction. There was frustration I had with Johnny's testimony. There was frustration I had with the nurse's testimony, the doctor's testimony, uh, Amber's testimony, everyone else. The thing
That's
that
a good point.
frustrates me, yep, the thing that frustrates me is when people try to use the system or game the system, and they readdress facts or they readdress stories in a way to dramatize them to try to elicit emotions from a jury that aren't real. That's not fair. That's not how the
Great
justice
point.
system works. You need to be able to approach it fairly. So when I analyze Amber Heard, I'm analyzing it from the perspective of this is a juror who is quite honestly innocent in this case. He or she are completely innocent. And by innocent, I mean they are virgin to all of the information they're about to hear. The information they are presented with has to be the most fair and accurate representation of the facts. And
Great
if they
point.
don't get that, they can't make the right decision. So when they're not getting that, I get really frustrated, which is why some of my frustration comes out when I'm watching testimony like this. So
You know
I
what?
don't judge one person. Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
love
get it.
that point. And it kind of just made something click in my head. And what clicked in my head is this. It seems like in my analysis, I'm a little bit harder on Amber than I was with Johnny. Because with Johnny, I said, I think there's some omission there. I'm seeing signs of deception there. I did talk about some clusters of deception where I felt he was hiding stuff, but it never seemed like I was really on his case. And I think the reason what just clicked in my head is because with Johnny, although I'm seeing behaviors that I can analyze with my experience, there aren't direct contradictions in his narrative. With Amber, there's enormous contradictions in her narrative. We're even seeing Camille ask her things, and she'll give two answers very close to one another that don't work together. And I've got a great example of this in my coming analysis where she says two answers that cannot coexist in the same world. And there's a lot of that. So I think that's where I'm going. That's more evidence because the behaviors, you can contest it and say, okay, maybe she's stressed, maybe she's this, maybe she's really trying to sell the narrative. But when there are parts of your narrative that don't work together or you're directly contradicting yourself, that's a problem. So, Rob, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. You have given such valuable information, and not just as someone who was in the room, but somebody who understands the legal system and is clearly very passionate about that. I don't think I have to be a behavior analyst to know how much doing things right and upholding the law means to you. You get very emotional when you talk about that. So that passion, and quite honestly, some amazing body language observations there that I think we can all applaud you for. So Rob, thank you so much. Please, to all the viewers, go follow Rob. He just started a channel. It's right there under his name. It says Law and Lumber, but I will also leave it in the description. Please, please, please go give him that subscribe. He's doing some wonderful stuff. He did a video, you guys have to see it, where he talked about the damage that the bed took, and he talked about what would have been possible and how that damage would have happened. And I think it's incredible. It's like an episode of CSI. It was amazing. And I have my analysis coming up soon. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this. And Rob, you're welcome back on the channel anytime, man.
Thank you, buddy. Love it, Spidey. It's great.